What's up, everybody? Today we're going to be changing out the brake pads on a 2011 Chevy Equinox. We're going to do the front and the rear. Okay, so here is basically the essential tools that you're going to need to be able to replace the brake pads on a 2011 Chevy Equinox. You're going to have a jack. You maybe don't need one quite as heavy, but obviously it's nicer to have that one, but you can use the one that came with your car. It'll work. A jack stand for safety, just to place under the car once the car is jacked up. We use the stock wrench that came to crack the lugs open or off the tires. Just a pair of pliers to help hold those gaskets from spinning when we were taking off the 14mm bolts off the calipers. You're going to need an open-ended wrench, 14mm, with the box end as well would help. Just a normal socket wrench, 14mm. Just a regular flathead screwdriver. You'll need one of these C-clamps to decompress the piston. Of course, you're going to need your brake pads. We did all 4 tires, so we had the set for the rear and the set for the front. You're going to need some brake lubricant. Here's the one that we used. I'll put links in the description for you. And any kind of brake parts cleaner will work. Doesn't matter the brand. We did not need brake fluid because we did not bleed any of the lines. Our brake fluid is full. But if you're going to want to check your brake fluid reservoir and just see how that is on your car before you do the job. Optional tools, I have this Ryobi impact driver. I have the kit to use the 22 to help. So what we do is we would crack the lug for the wheel with this, and then I would jack the car up, and then I would use this to take it off so I didn't have to use my hand, but it's optional. You really don't need it. But that's about all that we used in the video to do the job. We're not mechanics, we're just everyday people. We did the job, it came out great, and saved us a bunch of money. So thanks for watching. If you like it, share this video, like and subscribe. Thank you. Okay, so once you get your wheel off, here's your brake caliper. You're actually going to take off 2 bolts. This one, and there's another one right down here. These are a size 14mm. So all you'll need to do that is just a standard wrench. And we're going to go ahead and loosen both of these bolts right now and then pull the caliper off. These are pretty easy to crack. They're not too stiff. But if you notice that this piece right here starts to spin, mine were not frozen up, so you could just kind of take your hand if you need to and kind of hold it. But you may need to use a wrench to fit on there. But like I said, I'm just using my hand to hold the bolt into place so that it doesn't rotate from inside of here and tear this little bushing. Same thing on the bottom, it's just directly below. This one's already loose, so there we go. Now, the caliper obviously is going to be tight, so you may need to stick a flat screwdriver in here to kind of open that piston up because the brakes have been tight from being pumped up. I'm going to see if I can just wiggle it off by hand first. You don't want to pull too hard. As you can see, it's starting to loosen, but I don't want to pull too hard and do damage to any of the brake lines. And there it is. So usually I'll set this up here to where it won't fall. It's not creasing any of the brake lines here. Real quick, I took some rope and just went through one of the screw holes on the caliper and tied it off up here to one of the springs for the shocks, just so that this, because it's pretty heavy, and when we're in there working around, I didn't want it to fall over and do damage to the line. So you don't have to do something like that, you just got to be really careful though. So just a recommendation, just to support it, put that in there. So for this part, I'm just going to take a little flathead, just get in here and just lightly pry these out. There you go. So you can see there's virtually no pad left on this one. So here's your new pad compared to the old pad. So these were done. They weren't grinding or anything yet, but obviously there's not much left there. You're gonna notice the performance of them is pretty bad. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and just kind of get in here and do the same thing on the back side. There they go. Got that one out. So the pad that was on the back, when we pop it off, our pads did not come with this little metal piece, so you're going to be very careful not to damage this. It just literally pops right off of there, and we're going to pop it on the new one. If you bought pads, maybe it came with these, you might not have to do it. So that's something to take a look at. You can see that this rear pad is different than the front pad. Here's the front, the one that goes on the front right here. There's no clip, this clip right here. So you know that it's going to go on the back based off of this little clip here. So as you can see, ours doesn't have that little piece on there, so we're actually going to snap that piece on, and that's it. So you can see this circle here is where the caliper presses on this pad, which then in turn will go ahead and press up against the rotor to stop the car. Here's the brake lubricant that I like. You can get this at AutoZone. What we're going to do is we're going to apply this all to the back area of this pad before we put it in. I kind of just like to get it over everything. That way, you know, if any brake dust and all that stuff gets in there, this grease will hopefully keep these brakes nice and quiet. Okay, so that's it.
All right, spray all this down.
Go ahead and spray the caliper as well. All up in there.
Alright.
Okay. So we actually want to put some grease on these metal clips that the brake pads sit inside of. Just, you know, because everything where there's going to be kind of grinding going on, we don't want any kind of noise. So just take your finger, apply a little bit of grease to the clips on this side.
And if they pop
and
out,
on this side.
they just snap right back in.
So we're going to do the same thing with the grease on both brake pads. Just get it rubbed in there. Okay. So these are going to go this way. You can see notches right here and right here. And there's these little metal clips right here. They might fight you a little bit with trying to get it in there, but just keep pushing, get the right angle, and eventually you'll feel it slide right into place, and you can see it fits right into the little groove there. So I'll put a link in the description to one of these C-clamps. I picked this up at AutoZone, I believe. You can get them pretty much anywhere. But what I'm going to do is use one of the old pads, and I'm going to press it up against the piston, and then I'm going to use this clamp to press and push the piston all the way in, because this is not going to fit over these nice fat new brakes. All right, so I've got the old brake pad covering the piston so I don't do any damage to it, and I'm just going to slowly start tightening my C-clamp. And basically we're going to want to press this to where that piston goes all the way down. And there's some tension here, but it's not stuck, it's not frozen. It's not like I'm having to push too hard with force. And there we go. It's all the way in. Okay, so you can see the piston's fully in. Now we're going to go ahead and put this back in place. Just be careful not to drop this. So you can see that these are, you'll use your finger to push this back in. It's got a little gasket there. Same thing on the bottom one. And we're just going to feel, I have my screws here. We're going to feel until we get this in where it's lined up. You may have to wiggle a little bit, and there we go. I think I feel it starting to go in. Okay, so that one's in. And that one's in. So now we're going to go ahead and tighten those up. So here we are in the back. On the back, because the brake line is in the way, we can't really get the socket to fit over here cleanly. So we're actually going to take an open-ended wrench. You can either use, it's still a 14 millimeter, by the way. You can still use the open end, or what we'll do is use the box end to go ahead and crack this one. So there's that one. And there's that one. So as you can see, if this starts to spin, what we'll probably do is hold it with our finger. Or a pair of pliers. It's pretty loose at this point, so I'm just going to use my hand to hold it. There's our first screw. There's our second screw. So once we got both of our bolts out, just the same as in the front, we're just going to kind of work this up. The back one is smaller, so it's a little bit easier to work with. And then our pads are right here. So we'll go ahead and just take a screwdriver on one on each end. Not much prying needed on these. You don't want to pry too hard anyway up against the rotor. We're not replacing the rotors on this today. So like I said, right on the very ends, there's actually a little bit of gap for you to get a little screwdriver flathead down in there. And what I'm just doing is just kind of working it. Till it comes out. There we go. Okay, so on the rear pads, the old pad has this piece of metal on there. This new pad actually already comes with that piece of metal on there. It's just to protect the back. So the front, we had to remove the bigger metal clip for the piston up there. The rear, we actually don't, because it's already got the metal clip attached. And this one, if you tried to put it on, you're going to notice that it actually doesn't fit because there's already a metal pad on there. So for these particular brake pads, we don't need to do that. But we're going to go ahead and take our grease like we did on the front, and we're going to get in and just basically grease the metal clips on the front and the back. And then the pad, you're not going to get any grease on this side. That side's the side that is going to press up against the rotor. We don't want grease there. We want grease on the back, because this piston right here is actually what presses up against here, and that's where your brake squeaking comes from. And after I decompress this piston with the clamp, I'm actually going to take some and put grease on just the metal ring right here as well. So just like we did on the front, we're going to take one of the old brake pads. I'm going to place it in here on the caliper, and carefully we'll kind of move this into position. Okay, and we'll start to decompress the back piston. So I'm just slowly turning this in. Like I said, it's not too forceful. And that's it. If the piston's all the way in, take it off. As you can see here, it's fully in. I'm going to take a little bit of grease now and just apply it to there before I put it back on. Okay. Take my fingers and kind of push these little springs back in. As you can see, it's pretty much already sitting in place. And I'll use my hands first to start the screw. Make sure that it's not cross-threaded. Okay, it's in there. Okay, that one's in there. So like I said, when we go to tighten this, you do want to make sure that that gasket there, that rubber gasket, is not going to spin. So you may need a pair of pliers. For now, I'm going to just use my hand until I can't hold it into place anymore, and then I'll grab a pair of pliers. Okay, so it's pretty snug. At this point, my hand is not going to hold it into place, so I'll use some pliers and get it nice and tight. So that one's tight, and we'll do this side. So as you can see, a little bit of movement, so I'll just hold it with my hand. Okay, so now it's pretty snug. I'm going to get my pair of pliers. Okay, and we're nice and tight. Just wanted to show you real quick. We're using a nice jack that I got from Home Depot. I got it with a kit that came with these Husky jack stands as well. You know, you always want to be safe. Of course, we're taking off one tire at a time, but we're still using a jack stand, and I'm leaving the jack under the car, propped up. And on the front end, I have 25-pound dumbbells to kick under the tire. We've kicked them under the tires on both sides. That one's rolled off, so I'll go kick it back under there. But basically, we've got the emergency brake on. But when you're jacking up the car, just always remember to be safe. Okay, so we just finished up. We put all the brake pads on the car. We got all the tools up, cleared up, out of the way up here. What we're gonna do before we start it up and try anything is we're gonna have him pump the brake pad, the pedal, several times till it gets some tension on it. So go ahead and start pumping. Keep pumping.
Tension now.
So you see it went almost all the way to the floor, the first pump, and now there's tension on it. So all that's doing is just those pistons that we compressed all the way to that back, it's getting that tension back onto the brake pads. So now what we're gonna do is he's actually gonna start up the car, and we'll slowly test them backing up out of the driveway. And then if they stop good, what we'll do is we'll actually have him go forward and kind of slam on the brakes really hard, you know, going 15 to 20 miles an hour to get them set. So he's gonna just slowly go out of my driveway so we can test his brakes. Okay, go ahead and hit him. So he's just kind of going slow to work them in. Back up fast and then slam on your brakes. Faster. How do they feel?
Perfect.
No squeaking going on? All right, so he's giving it a little test drive. The brakes are working good, nothing's squeaking, so job's done.